Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start with today's video, I just want to go ahead and set an analogy for you guys for a minute. Please stick with me because it's a really good one that I came up with. With the recent ending of the Super Bowl, and now we found out who won and who did not win, it seems like a lot of people understand football analogy far better than geopolitics. So I want to go ahead and paint a picture here for you. The reason why I am so against the Iran versus America war is simply because you have to understand that for a very long time, America has been engaged, whether that's proxy war or direct wars, and America has been using a lot of its arsenal. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, Iran has been sitting idly by, watching exactly what's happening, taking notes, and trying to understand how America think and operate. Okay, and the reason why I am making a correlation with sports is simply because imagine a small team, let's say CU Boulder, a college football team, okay? And with the winner of Super Bowl, which is the Seahawk, imagine Seahawk has been going around beating and just playing against a lot of teams. And CU Boulder is sitting by idly watching and taking notes as Seahawk goes around just doing everything that it can. And then one day, CU Boulder understands that one day the Seahawk is going to come and face them. All right? With all the notes that has been taken, with all the bombs that has been dropped, with the 20-year war that has happened, and then of course with the 12-day war, Iran has been taking a lot of notes on America. Iran has been taking not only notes, but there were bombs that were dropped that did not detonate, and Iran took those notes and reverse engineered these bombs.
Maybe the Epstein files that are being gradually increasingly viewed by the public, it may cause Trump to attack Iran to create a distraction. No one really knows what will happen, and no one knows what Netanyahu will say. What I can say, Judge, is that Iran has been working 24 hours a day to prepare itself for another war. And each day that goes by, Iran is going to become stronger than the previous day. Time is not on the side of the United States or the Israeli regime when it comes to war. Iran has learned a lot from the 12-day war. Unlike the American government and the Israeli regime that have been constantly at war testing their weapons, Iran, ever since Saddam Hussein invaded Iran, after that war, Iran has never had a war. The 12-day war was an enormous learning experience, and the Iranians have been taking advantage of that. So in my opinion, if they were sane.
So now that you have this picture in your mind, now that you understand that Iran has been taking note, and yet you have Israel trying to force the hand of Donald Trump to engage in a combat with Iran after all the information Iran has collected for the years of war that America has been fighting. I'm gonna go ahead and now have this brother here from Propaganda Co, Netanyahu, trying to drag the US into a war with Iran. You have to understand, you know what? Let's watch this video and then I will give my thought on it and help you understand exactly what's kind of going on. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but I am listening to expert. I am trying to understand geopolitics to the best of my ability, and it doesn't really take a rocket scientist to kind of find out that this war is going to be mutual destruction.
We have all been on the edge of our seats, waiting to see if this highly destructive war is actually going to take place. Right now, there are two things happening. Both sides are preparing for war as if it is definitely going to happen, while simultaneously negotiating as if they want to avoid it entirely. Despite the rhetoric, the propaganda, and the fear-mongering, the negotiations are in fact continuing. Right now, Ali Larijani, a top Iranian security official, is in Oman, continuing to lay the groundwork for negotiations with the United States.
Iran says there's enough consensus to continue on the diplomatic track with the United States to avoid military confrontation. Iranian and American officials have been engaged in a flurry of diplomatic activities after months of rising tension. The head of Iran's National Security Council, Ali Larijani, is in Oman. He's meeting the Sultan and the foreign minister. And this comes a week after Oman hosted talks between Tehran and Washington. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is heading to the U.S. He's expected to push President Donald Trump to expand the negotiations to include Iran's missile program. Tehran has rejected those demands, warning they could have a destructive impact on the diplomatic efforts.
European countries miss past opportunity to play a constructive role and fail to act independently or positively in diplomatic processes, instead choosing to follow others and making serious miscalculations.
At the same time, however, both Iran and the U.S. continue to beef up their military posture for a potential confrontation. The U.S. has moved 6 out of their 7 THAAD missile defense systems to the region. There are 3 in the Gulf, 2 in Israel, and 1 in Jordan.
Here's a fun fact. How do you think they got these images?
Potential confrontation. The U.S.
How do you think these images are being put up? You think it's Iran that took these pictures? It's not. It's actually China. Yeah, China is using its satellite to actually pay attention to what's going on and feeding that information to Iran. I mean, people don't really understand the scope of what's really going on. America has been, sucking its own dick for the longest time because it feels like, it's a superpower. So it feels like it can do anything and everything it wants to do. Time has changed. We are no longer living in the time of Vietnam anymore. We are no longer living in the time of, World War II. After World War II, I would say, sorry. When America became the superpower about 80 years ago, we are no longer living in that time anymore. Time has changed. Russia, China, these nations, they have nuclear weapon, ladies and gents. Pakistan also has nuclear weapon. Yes, at the moment Iran doesn't, but right now they have equipment. They're ready to build one in like a month.
Has moved 6 out of their 7 THAAD missile defense systems to the region. There are 3 in the Gulf, 2 in Israel, and 1 in Jordan. The THAAD missile defense system is the most expensive and effective defensive tool the U.S. has to defend against ballistic missiles, as the best opportunity to intercept Iran's high-speed rockets is to catch them in their terminal phase. But even this system is limited in its ability to intercept because Iran has designed their missiles to change its trajectory in its terminal phase. So the interception rate isn't perfect, and even if it was, the U.S. is limited in its missile stockpile. Still, the presence of these THAAD missile defense systems all over the region indicates that the U.S. is in fact preparing for a potential war with Iran. Now, to Iran's credit, they have begun to redevelop self-respect and are deterring the U.S. by showing them that they are willing to fight a major war if necessary to defend their sovereignty.
It comes after Friday's talks in which
and you got to understand, this dude has been calling for this war for the past 30 plus years, and he is about to get it. And nobody is going to stand in his way. I recently put it on my X saying that the only time that these guys are buying is because they're waiting for Ramadan to start. When Muslims start fasting, yeah, we are in a position in which we're hungry, we're thirsty. We're not thinking properly because we're focused trying to fast. That's when these guys are going to go ahead and take advantage of that.
Iran's foreign minister drew a red line and said that they do not want to talk about their ballistics. Despite all of this, President Trump, at least on Friday after these talks in Oman, felt that Iran will come to a deal.
Yeah, there's a deal that would be acceptable, but the one thing, and right up front, no nuclear weapons. If we could have made that deal 2 years ago, we would have made that deal, but they weren't willing to do that. Now they are willing to do it. So they're willing to do much more than they would have a year and a half ago.
If they're not willing to, the president says strikes are very much still on the table. Iranian foreign minister responding to that. If the U.S. attacks us, it is evident that we don't have the ability and access to attack U.S. territory and therefore have to attack or retaliate the U.S. bases in the region.
This posture from Iran has made Trump hesitate, despite the massive firepower he has been assembling in the region for the last month, which has forced him to continue to pursue negotiations with Iran. This has spooked Benjamin Netanyahu, who today has flown to Washington, D.C. to speak with Trump yet again and demand that he force Iran to dismantle its missile defense program. Remember, Israel's initial concern was the nuclear program. Now they're moving the goalpost yet again and demanding that Iran limits its missiles as well. well. It is incredibly arrogant for Israel to demand that Iran weaken itself just to make Israel feel safer and more secure. And it's even worse.
Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, they have nuclear bomb in the Middle East. Yeah, this guy right here, they have nuclear bomb in the Middle East. But yeah, he's making demands saying, oh, Israel's not allowed to, I mean, not Israel, I'm sorry. Iran is not allowed to have this bomb. They're not allowed to defend themselves.
Worse, that Netanyahu thinks he can just fly to DC and demand that Trump does whatever he wants. This is Netanyahu's 6th trip to the United States since Trump returned to office last year in 2025. This is unprecedented. Netanyahu has been claiming to office last year.
Oh, never mind. I thought it was 7. Sorry, I apologize. I thought it was the 7th visit. I didn't even...
in 2025. This is unprecedented. Netanyahu has been claiming that Trump is Israel's best friend, but it actually seems like Trump is their best hostage. Many people obviously speculate that Israel has control over Trump via the Mossad, given Trump's connection to Epstein, who many believe was, in fact, an Israeli intelligence asset. It's unclear how Netanyahu will try and convince Trump to fight with Iran, but one possibility is that he will threaten Trump with blackmail. Whatever the plan is, we all know that Israel wants a war with Iran, and they want the U.S. to do the fighting for them, as they have already tried and failed to destroy Iran during the 12-day war. So we know for a fact that Netanyahu will try to derail these negotiations with Iran and force a conflict. Fox News reports that Israel may attack Iran on its own yet again, which would obviously be another attempt to try and drag the U.S. into the war.
Senior White House correspondent Aisha Hasni joins us now with the latest. Hey, Aisha.
Hey, good morning to you, Brian, Lawrence, and Ainsley. So that meeting between Netanyahu and Trump has been moved up by a whole week. It's a very urgent meeting now, and the dust-up over negotiations seems to be over the ballistic missiles program that Iran has. This is a statement from Benjamin Netanyahu's office. It says the prime minister believes that all negotiations must include limiting the ballistic missiles and ending support for the Iranian access, and that is in regards to Tehran's support for those militant groups, including Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in the Palestinian territories.
Israeli concerns extend beyond the negotiating table. A former intelligence official familiar with strategic planning said Israel retains the capability to strike independently if necessary. Israel can act by itself if there is no choice.
It can't. It cannot do it.
Official said, adding that missile expansion and regional threats would be key triggers. They say that the optics of Israeli pressure on Washington could complicate matters. If missiles become the central public demand, it may look as if Israel is pushing the U.S. toward military action. If that fails, Israel could be blamed. For Israel, the implication is clear. A nuclear agreement that leaves Iran's missile infrastructure untouched could be seen in Jerusalem as stabilizing the regime while leaving the most immediate threat in place. That calculation, Israeli analysts say, defines the red line. Translation: Israel demands regime change in Iran and will force a war if it doesn't get what it wants. This posture is why I believe a war is inevitable at some point. There is simply zero middle ground for there to be an agreement. Iran either surrenders or fights. Israel will ensure that the U.S. doesn't meet Iran halfway in order to avoid a conflict. All we can do at this point is monitor the situation closely. Now, I know you keep hearing that a war is right around the corner, and that hasn't happened yet, but it doesn't mean that it won't happen at all. So the best thing that you can do is stay on your toes and expect the unexpected. Be sure to give us a follow if you haven't already to stay up to date on development.
So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, now here's my opinion about this whole thing. First of all, Israel cannot attack Iran on its own and actually survive. They know that for a fact. What they're trying to do is force the Americans to join. When the 12-day war was happening back in June, there were Israelis agents in the Pentagon demanding the generals to actually attack Iran just to put a stop to what Iran was doing to Israel.
During the 12-day war, such as it was with Iran, the U.S. and Israel versus Iran, bombing on all sides. During that short conflict, IDF officers in the Pentagon, foreign military officers in the Pentagon, and by the way, they're not the only foreign military officers in the Pentagon, to be clear. There are NATO officers, they're from other countries, British, but there are a bunch of Israeli Defense Force officers in the Pentagon that week. And during that week, ask anyone who works at the Pentagon, they enraged American Pentagon staff by just barging into meetings, giving orders, making demands, and nobody did anything about it. How can a foreign military officer barge into military headquarters, even if invited, but barge into a meeting and start demanding, we want this, we want that, you need to get on this? Huh? The more you allow that kind of deeply unhealthy behavior, the more you're going to get.
I've seen a documentary of the aftermath of what happened to Iran, but we never saw a documentary of what happened to Israel, because they understand that, well, this is too much damage. We've seen the video. We've seen rocket raining down on them. We've seen the destruction, at least some of them. But they're not telling us everything, because one thing you need to understand is Israel wants to pretend like it's a macho man in the middle of the desert. Just recently, I'm reading a book by Norman Finkelstein during the Operation Cast Lead. These guys literally dropped white phosphorus on the Palestinian people and just decimated the Palestinian. Why? It's not because Hamas decided to attack them, but rather, well, they wanted to show the world or their neighbors that we're not weak. And the best way they did that is by obviously attacking innocent people, civilians. This is how these people operate. This is why I don't like them. Okay? I don't like them. Because they're a bully. They're the T in the Middle East, even though they pretend that everybody around them is. Meanwhile, they're the one that's the T in the Middle East. This attack is coming. Did anybody predict the Rising Lion, which they call the 12-Day War, when they preemptively attacked Iran? Did anybody predict that was coming? No. This is coming. This whole peace talk, oh, we're going to try to talk to Iran and see what they're going to do and blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. Because if that was the case, Benjamin Netanyahu wouldn't be calling for war for the past 30 years with these people. Rather, he'd be saying, we need a peace talk with Iran. We need a peace talk with Iran. It was never about peace. It's always about, we need to get rid of Iran because they're the one that are standing in our way to having greater Israel. Because after Iran, guess who they're going to go for next? Pakistan. And Pakistan is a nuclear weapon country. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you learned a little bit from that. Later.